Hello, welcome to my talk, and thank you, first of all, to DroidCon New York for the invite to this wonderful city, which I'm enjoying for the first time, and I hope those of you here are enjoying it too. So, what do I do in the daytime? My name is Chris Ward, and I'm the Android Engineering Manager for NordVPN at Nord Security. You will have seen us on the best YouTube ads. And if you use it, thank you very much, it's very kind. And if you, and if you use us, thank you so much for paying my salary and for my New York trip. Also, we're hiring, so if you do fancy a new opportunity in Berlin or even Vilnius, which is a beautiful city in Lithuania, do give me a shout afterwards. I should probably mention that views expressed here are my own, not necessarily because my company doesn't hold them, but because I haven't asked them if they hold them. So it seems like a sensible catch-all just to say, views my own. And what I do in the nighttime, sort of. Because a lot of the stuff I will be talking about spills more into my activism work. Those of you who have been to other DroidCons will know I spend a lot of time talking about ADHD and neurodiversity within coding, but outside of that, when I have time, I have done some party politics and still dabble a little. In fact, if you look very, very closely at that picture of me in the UN, you'll see an Android sticker on my laptop. So pushing our propaganda in the Human Rights Council. Other than that, I've been elected, I've been unelected, nobody's perfect, and actually I'd really recommend failure in activism, just not too much of it. As Yoda says, the greatest teacher failure is. Oh, and standing in an election 4 years after you've moved to that country, not speaking a word of a language, is a really good way to force yourself to learn that language. Can thoroughly recommend. So who is this guy telling us we can change the world with an app? Might as well say disrupt and get it over and done with. And I know, right? And even worse, I've got a British accent, so everything I say will sound extra patronizing. And if you think this, you are my people. Because if I saw this as a talk title, I'd probably draw the same conclusion. A healthy dose of cynicism is actually a good thing in activism. Can an app change the world? I mean, sometimes. There are demonstrable examples, but yours probably won't. And that's okay. But it might nudge that boulder a tiny bit closer towards that change. Or it might improve the lives of a certain group of people, or just fix things in your local community. Most greater social change is achieved through small increments, not because you disrupted anything. Look at any social change achieved through the years, and you'll see rarely one person behind it, but the fruits of a huge joint and combined effort, often over a long period of time. So let me set expectations here. I'm not going to teach you how to disrupt, or how to fix world hunger, or obtain peace in the Middle East, or get React Native to be good. What I will do is talk about my experiences of how I accidentally became successful with an app that did help change a law, and how you can identify areas where tech may be able to make these small incremental changes. So here's a quick rundown of my story. In 2012, the UK's coalition government decided they were going to consult on introducing same-sex marriage. At the time, it wasn't something I expected to see anytime soon, but obviously hoped for. Luckily, everybody responded to this initiative with rational, thoughtful, and contemplative discourse. Collecting these quotes together again for this talk actually really does underline for me how much we achieved in making this law, because those who opposed marriage equality really threw everything at it. And it's important to remember, these aren't just some homophobes ranting at the TV at home. These are powerful, influential institutions with networks of followers, a wealth of resources, and vast hordes of money. And I won't lie, it's sort of a bit satisfying reading these again and knowing that they failed, because when I first read them back in 2012, being told that for me wanting to have what everybody else had, which is the opportunity to have a relationship with my partner recognized, and then seeing quotes from people who have the most senior of government ministers at their beck and call, and refer to that want as one of the most biggest threats in 500 years. Think about all the things that have happened in 500 years. I don't want to draw comparisons, but I live in Berlin. I can think of a few things. This didn't just hurt me. Growing up as a queer, you get hurt. You get used to it. This terrified me because I grew up around people who received their moral guidance from these individuals. And I know just how seriously this can sometimes be taken. So I was pretty determined to do whatever I could. And that involved campaigning, which I did in the classic sense with everybody else who wanted change. Now, the bill overwhelmingly passed its first vote in the House of Commons by 400 to 175. I didn't expect it to with such a big majority, and obviously that's great news, but forever the pessimist, several more steps remained. And the one I was certain would end the bill in its entirety is when it came to the House of Lords. And for those of you who aren't from the UK or don't know much about the political system, imagine the US Senate, but entirely unelected, a series of failed politicians and party donors appointed by political parties and prime ministers, frankly rotten to the core, and when it came to accountability, there was none. They had no electorate to answer to. They had those seats for life. Historically, very conservative. It had a record of voting against gay rights bills. And it's also one of the only two legislatures in the world where bishops of a state religion have guaranteed seats granted to them. So the odds were against us. Anyway, Out for Marriage, the primary campaign in the UK fighting for legalisation, got in touch with me and sort of asked if I'd develop a tool that would allow people to lobby individual members of the House of Lords to vote for the bill. So my partner and I cleared our plans for the week and got to knocking together the hackiest, quickest solution we could. And this wasn't easy because it wasn't just about the code. So we had a lot of challenges. There were hundreds of members of the House of Lords, and a number of them didn't have email addresses, at least publicly visible. So along with a group of others, we painstakingly researched every single peer, or that's the gender-neutral term for a member of the House of Lords, in order to try and find an email address somewhere, whether it was on their personal website or just another business interest they had. I'm not sure how GDPR would think about that today, but at the time it worked. And some of those peers were more active in the House of Lords than others, but they all had a vote, and they could all turn up to exercise it. And I remember once an MP telling me that there are two things that always got the House of Lords out en masse to vote, and it was gays and foxes, because a number of them were stuffy homophobes who strongly supported fox hunting. Imagine being a gay fox in the UK. It was really difficult. But this underlined the importance of this for me, and it's why I put everything I could into it. If we lost this vote, the political reality was that we would not get a chance anytime soon. The coalition government of Liberals and Conservatives was already breaking at the seams, and a majority of the ruling party's MPs had voted against the bill, their own bill in the House of Commons. So if the Lords killed it, the political reality was it was dead for the foreseeable. So after a week of rushed coding, here's what we produced. It was basic, but it worked. Not only did we get the email addresses, or as many as we could, but we scraped together their previous voting record as well, so people could target if they wanted to. And we kept a record of their declared stance. So users would click Lobby This Lord, get a short form, fill it in. They'd then get an email sent to their own email address to ask them to verify. That's something that has since been made mandatory in the EU by GDPR, so ahead of the curve. And once they clicked the verify link, email was fired off to that member of the House of Lords. And I can't understate how poorly cobbled together this was. I was roughly 6 years into my career, and this was a mess of a WordPress install, hacked together with a from-scratch PHP web API and a basic MySQL backend. And it was hosted on £2.99 a month web hosting. And the emails were sent using that hosting's SMTP server. I haven't seen the original code in a very long time, and I'm not sure I'd want to. The front end was written in jQuery. But my partner and I thought that if 200 people lobbied the Lords, then, we'd done our bit. That small push, that boulder might not achieve much, but we'd have at least said we've contributed what we could. Anyway, we got to those 200 emails roughly an hour after we released it. And then things started to get a little bit out of control. And do you know how well $2.99 a month, hosting deals with a vast number of visitors and multiple emails being sent at the same time. It's not well. And then one afternoon, I've still got pains. We had a notification that the site was down, and we panicked, tried to work out what was going on, and then we saw this. Stephen Fry! Stephen Fry tweeted about a website I made. Stephen Fry, the head gay himself. My career has reached its peak. Nothing will ever beat this. That was my first thought. And my second thought was, Stephen Fry tweeted a web app I put onto cheap hosting. Stephen Fry has 6 million Twitter followers. Anyway, by the end of that day, we were doing all right, even if my blood pressure wasn't. The app would crash each time too many people tried sending an email at the same time. So that night I set to work changing the way the app worked. Instead of emails being sent directly when the user clicked the send button or verify link, we placed those emails into a queue table in the MySQL database. I wrote a very hacky .NET console app that processed that queue and sent those emails, one email every couple of seconds to prevent the SMTP server being overloaded. So we were finally Stephen Fry-proof. And Grindr-proof. Yep, as men around the UK were logging on to hook up, they were given an alert asking them to briefly hold off on their craving for cock and visit a website I made to lobby members of the House of Lords. I'm sort of proud of that one. So the day came and an amendment was tabled to kill the same-sex marriage bill in the House of Lords. It was called the Dear Amendment, which sounds nicer than it is, named after the Lord who tabled it. In the week running up to it, and in the debate, we heard from Lords themselves that they'd been lobbied harder than ever before. At that point, 15,000 emails had been sent, so good, we'd had an impact, but I still expected we'd lose. By that point, I was pretty exhausted. After work that day, I made my way to Parliament with my partner to get a friend to hopefully bring us into the gallery of the House of Lords so we could watch the vote happen, but it was already packed, so we had to go to the Lords Bar instead. For those who aren't familiar, there are lots of bars in Parliament. And in all those bars, there are screens showing the person speaking currently, or the current vote going on, or the result of the vote. So we were sat in this dingy bar, waiting for numbers to turn up on a red screen and hoping that the not contents had beaten the contents, and that the amendment had fallen. And this was a photograph moment when I realized a crappy app I knocked together in a week had actually helped change a law. And well, no, that's not true. The first thing I thought was the numbers were wrong, because actually that was an overwhelming victory. Always the pessimist. But nope, we'd won. The Dear Amendment was defeated. Same-sex marriage went back to the House of Commons for its final vote and became law in 2014. And this picture always cheers me up. And then it got a little weird. I was thanked by name by the Prime Minister for it at a reception in Downing Street, which was lovely but bizarre. And I suspect the last time a Conservative Prime Minister will thank me for anything, and that's me there in the ill-fitting suit, not quite realizing how far in front I was standing, which probably explained why the special branch guys looked a little nervous. Think of what you could have had, Britain. Actually, at the time, this seemed like quite a ludicrous photo, but that was before Boris Johnson walked through those doors. Anyway, I'm not here to reminisce. As lovely and as emotional it was to go through all this again, I'm here to explain how and why this worked. So what were the keys to success? First, it was simple and did one thing well. You go to the page, and in a few moments, you could have lobbied a member of the House of Lords. People are busy, yeah? They have lives, and if you don't make something ridiculously quick or simple, it will go on their to-do later list, and that means it won't be done. Secondly, there's a narrative to this. We know that the various other organisations spent a lot of money on their campaigns, and this was money we didn't have. And we made it clear in all the publicity that this was knocked together by a couple of activists. So this David versus Goliath element definitely helped, especially given the hysteria coming from opponents. Dissemination of a message, that is absolutely key. And although Facebook and Twitter were the thing back then, and they've indeed sort of shown just how much impact they can really have on the democratic process since, the ability to distribute a message is vital. Oh, and thanks to Stephen Fry and Grindr. Then there's the unity point. The thing that changed the law was not the app. It was the people that used it. We didn't make same-sex marriage happen. We provided a means for people to make same-sex marriage happen. And that's pretty much all of us. That's our day jobs too. We identify something that needs to be done, And we either a way to make it easier or to enhance that experience. The desire to go on the journey is already there. We just needed to build the roads. Do excuse me, I really need to follow water. The last point is really, really key, and I want to focus on it. Ideas and projects often don't see the light of day because people want their baby to be perfect with the best branding, the best marketing strategy, and the prettiest UI. But you need the product first, and you need it to work. The rest, can come along at the end. And with Lobby a Lord, the imperative of that deadline and the risk of losing this chance for a generation helped focus us on those priorities. It didn't matter that it wasn't pretty or that it was shoddily pulled together last minute. It worked, it functioned, and it filled a gap. And I'm not saying that these other things don't matter, but what I'm saying is don't let them stop you from creating that product in the first place. And let's be honest about this, every success in life has some degree of luck, and I think it would be crass and unfair to suggest that this was a result solely of my hard work and talents. It really, really wasn't. And this is important, because just like in ordinary corporate coding, you may pour your heart and your soul into an idea, and sometimes it just doesn't fly. That happens. Don't let it deter you, just learn and move on. And I've got a personal story behind that. In 2011, when I restood for my seat in the elections, my party was at an all-time low. I'd have been surprised if I held my seat, but I still worked like hell, and I lost by 5 votes. And that's a failure, sure, but it's one you can recover from. 5 votes is easier to claw back than 500. Remember, Yoda speaks truth. Failure is the best teacher, even if it hurts like hell. And as someone who's neurodiverse with various other mental funds, I appreciate it's a lot easier said than done to embrace failure. So don't kid yourselves. If a project fails, it's quite possibly a victim of circumstance. But also, if it succeeds, it's almost certainly benefited from being in the right place at the right time. We can't control those variables. Otherwise, you wouldn't need this talk because the world would be wonderfully predictable. A lot is down to chance. So let's abstract these lessons into some form of recipe. First of all, you need to identify a problem you want to fix. And my goodness, aren't you lucky? It's 2022, and you're pretty much spoiled for choice on problems to fix. The only thing I'd say is to try and find the right balance between realism and ambition. But for most people, that's something that comes with experience. It's pretty hard to teach. Next, you need a narrative and a message. And there's an important nuance here. The message needs to appeal. It can't just be, this thing is bad, let's fix this thing. When I stood in the Berlin elections last year, it was partially in a fit of anger that it was so difficult to get medication diagnosis for ADHD. The message could have been, mental health provisions are dreadful, let's fix it. And I went with this message instead. It should not be easier for me to get my ADHD meds from the dealers at Görlitzer Park than from my own doctor. And if you see the difference, there is a comparison that highlights the absurdity of the status quo. In a city sort of famed for being able to get access to all sorts of drugs and illicit substances you could possibly name, people who needed it for medicine were being gatekept. That comparison accentuated the injustice. Let's go back to same-sex marriage for another example. Which works better? Let's legalize same-sex marriage because love is love and we should all be equal? Or how about the message someone signed on a postcard we gave to our local MP? Please vote for same-sex marriage because I want to, at long last, be best man at my brother's wedding. The injustice becomes personal. It becomes emotional. Smooth. And this is not just about the code, right? This is not about the code, but we'll get to that. But even the best product needs a drive for people to use it. Then you need to work out what you want to achieve, okay? For us, we wanted members of the House of Lords to realise that opponents of the bill were not telling the truth and that actually the country did want same-sex marriage to happen. And they can look at the polls, but we're all human beings. Polls are abstract, they're just numbers. There's no emotion behind them. There's no narrative or message. And they didn't, you can't sort of see what difference this makes to the individual. And you know damn well that our opponents are messaging them saying emotional and very emotional arguments and appealing on scaremongering. And that we're asking their own followers to do exactly the same. So we had to counter that. So our realistic goal was that we wanted to ensure people could lobby Lords as easily and quickly as possible. And then there's the action the user needs to take to achieve that. And as I mentioned, assume they're super busy. Make it absolutely easy for them. Do not drown them with info they don't need. Just do that one thing, and if something needs adding later, you can worry about it then. The next step is sort of something I've learned from years of campaigning. Imagine all the people that care passionately about the thing that you're trying to achieve, yeah? In most cases, you're going to need a lot more than that number of people to succeed. You need people who care about it, but only slightly. People not directly affected. And how do you go about that? It goes back to the message and the narrative again. If you're an LGBT person and you landed on that page, there's a good likelihood you'd fill it in. If you're the cousin of an LGBT person, you might support it. But you're not as invested. And I know this is cynical, but it's a reality. So you need to make sure the appeal is there. The message that makes it personal, that brings colour to that injustice, that puts a face to the policy. You need to give them a reason to care, and if you don't have that, go back to step 2. And finally, implement the damn thing. And guess what? I used this system a few times again with successes for other charities, and with the benefit of extra time, I improved the code, the architecture, the infrastructure. I rented an actual mail server that was scalable. But these things make it easier and give you peace of mind. But do you think the user noticed the difference when they were on the web page written in a shiny new code with a nice new toys versus the basic jQuery crappy PHP? No. We notice it because we're coders. When you build the house, the quality of the materials plagues your mind because you know exactly how it was built. But in reality, whilst of course things may need reworking in order to scale, I would put that most projects don't see the light of day because people worry that it will become too successful and strain under that success before the damn thing's even been built. Write your API in basic PHP, host it on cheap hosting. Success is a wonderful problem to have, and that's a lesson actually I still need to sometimes remind myself of. And of course, get lucky. And if you fail, keep trying. So if you need some inspiration, here are some ideas that randomly come into my head whenever I get annoyed about something. In fact, that's a really good habit to get into. If you see something bad or annoying, ask what could fix it instead of just getting pissed off about it. First one, problem is Berlin, my city, is absolutely inaccessible, and the train companies really couldn't give a toss. And I regularly have to help carry pushchairs and wheelchairs, often with people in them, down a fairly high set of stairs on hot days as a result. So what does this suggested solution do? It does 2 things. It allows those with disabilities and others to communicate in one place when something is not working, when the lift is out of order, and to let others to know to adjust their journey in advance. But it also highlights just how bad the problem is and how little is being done about it. It shames the people with the power to do something, makes them harder to ignore. It does one thing simply. Second one is a bit more ambitious, but there are small innovations out there, if you take the time to look, that can help you monitor your energy usage. And despite the impending energy and climate crisis, what are governments actually doing to promote these things? This is a very international conference, and I'm being very Germany-centric at the moment, but I'm willing to bet that if I had to ask you what the steps would be in your country, in your locality, to get solar panels on your roof, either as a renter or an owner, most people wouldn't know. Making information available to people in an easy and accessible manner is a very underrated exercise. And it's very easy to sneer at those with lives who don't allow for being informed on certain issues, but far nicer to help fix that problem. And a final one came up for me during COVID when I was in Berlin, and we didn't do vaccinations particularly well. But it was accentuated for me since monkeypox became a thing, because I saw one doctor's practice website saying, "No, we don't have any doses available. Please don't contact us to ask." I mean, please don't contact us to ask. This is a doctor. What the hell do people do instead? But you see the problem, don't you? People want a vaccine, so they all email every single doctor at once. Doctors don't have it at that point, and only those with the foresight to collect a waiting list bother to do so. This is clearly a process that could be made far easier. All right, so these are just examples, and maybe they're rubbish, but if you thought to yourself, damn, these are okay ideas, why don't I come up with these? I promise you the answer is practice. Get involved in coding for good, and you realize that sometimes things just start coming to you. I sort of want to conclude with this thought, and please bear with me. The tone underlying any presentation about using tech to do good is the justified cynicism and even resentment at the very publicized bad it's done in recent years. We've seen examples where abuse and misuse of tech has literally had an impact on democracy in an extremely bad way. You don't need to tell me. I used my own flat as a campaign hub for Remain in the EU referendum. Big data and machine learning is often, sometimes correctly framed in terms of the damage it can cause. And then there's the Bird app and the online toxicity, the abuse, and the real-life consequences when these disputes are taken offline. In the gay community, we often talk about the harms that dating apps can cause. But then look at what else tech has done. In the 2008 election farce in Iran, Twitter gave users a voice they didn't have before. In various cases of injustices and violence, those things wouldn't have been brought to light if it wasn't for the proliferation of smartphones and the ability to take a photo and immediately publish it to the web. Machine learning is a huge ethical challenge, but used correctly can make huge advances in helping diagnoses in medicine through trends and data sets that just simply couldn't be traversed with rules. And yeah, we can talk about the toxicity of gay dating apps, but I also remember before smartphones, having to go to a seedy-looking gay bar in the next town to find someone like me, hoping I wouldn't get beaten up or worse when I left. Now queer people can talk with a greater degree of safety. And in countries where these challenges are even greater, these apps create a lifeline. The underlying point is that if tech is capable of such great evil, it has to have capabilities for good. And I'd like you all to think about the question I ask every single candidate I interview as a manager. What was it that made you want to become a developer? And I ask this for a variety of reasons, not least because it's hard to prep for. But the most important reason is that you find out more about that person from this question than any technical test can ever give you. We all have a personal story. Mine is twofold. I came from a poor background, went to a failing school that was closed down not long after I left, and to be frank, we didn't have much. And with a crappy, outdated laptop and a 56k internet connection, I was able to learn how to write lines of HTML and produce web pages, then Visual Basic apps, then C, then Java. For any other reasonably paid industry, you need connections, you need wealth, resources, and locality. That's the important thing, locality. You need to be in a place where these things happen. Now, despite my background, of course, this is an important caveat, I obviously have various other privileges that elevate me above those who don't make it in tech. But for a kid growing up on a council estate in Corby, tech gave me some form of opportunity. And the second reason I became a developer is this, and it's a very common answer from interviewees. I love putting code in, running it, and seeing it work or not immediately. I love producing things. I don't really need that many materials to do it beyond time and this machine. For those of us who do mobile apps, you know, there's no feeling, and I know you know this, like seeing people derive pleasure or value out of the things we produce. And when someone tells you they love using the app that you're working on, it feels good, doesn't it? That skill, coding, is an incredible one. We're really lucky. That's why people with power and influence have, up till now, thrown obscene amounts of money at app startups because they've seen the possibilities that can occur when someone implements a good idea well. For many of them, the motivation's profit, fine. For some, it's influence and power, as we've seen. But you can do these things for free because you have these skills. And that's really why I urge you to think about the good you can do for the people around you. Maybe for problems in your community, and maybe even for some law that needs changing. You have a really enviable gift. And let me assure you, if you think it feels good to hear someone say they used your app, wait until they you hear them say that their life improved because of something you did. There's no feeling like it, I promise you. In fact, after same-sex marriage went through, I went to my first wedding. Didn't even think about it, and then one of the grooms sidled up to me and said, "You did this." I was like, I'm already at a wedding, I don't need more things to make me cry. So I hope I've helped you think about what you might be able to do to just move that boulder slightly towards progress. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me today.